All right, so it's time for Algebra 1. This is Unit 2.1. Unit 2.1, we're just getting started. All right, let's get started. Let's get started. Let's get started. So I want to start off by saying that we're dealing with algebraic equations. And when we're dealing with algebraic equations, it's a way of making a sentence. All right, so this is a review. This part is just review, okay? All right, so 10 less than a number, un número. 10 menos que es un número es como máximo negativo 13, negativo 13. 10 less than a number is at most. Now, this is the most important part of this part. Is at most. Is at most. That's important because that's saying that it's going to be an inequality. Whenever you see is at most, that means that it's going to be less than or equal to. So when you see is at most, is at most, just keep in mind that it's going to be less than, well, that didn't come out right, less than or equal to. All right, so 10 less than a number. So a number will go with X, and it's 10 less than a number. So it's X minus 10, 10 less than a number. If I said that I'm 50 and you're 40 less than me, that means 50 minus 40. So if I say a number, a 10 less than a number, then the number comes first and be 10, so a number is X, 10 less minus 10 is at most. And like I said earlier, we're going to go with this inequality because n is at most is that inequality, which means less than, negative 13. All right, let's look at number 2. That's a lot of writing, right? The product of 6 and a number. Product, whenever you see the word product, that means multiplication, right? So you might do that, you might do this. Since you're in high school, we're not going to use the X anymore. We're going to use the dot sign. All right, you're moving on up. So the product of 6 and a number, so that's going to be 6 times X. And the great thing is when it's using a variable and a number, we don't even have to have the dot sign. We don't even need to have the dot sign. We can simply do 6x, which is 6 times x. So the product of 6 and a number, we already did that, is no less than. Now, is no less than is going to mean greater than or equal to. Greater than or equal to. So now we know is no less than. So all we're doing is translating. No less than 25. Okay, understood? Good, good, good. So now let's go into some things where we're going to use the calculator, all right? And I recommend that you use decimals. So that says evaluate, which means to figure out. And so what are we going to figure out? We're going to figure out the square root of 225. Now, I highly recommend that you always rewrite the problem. The reason that you rewrite the problem is it sticks in your brain better when you actively work on the problem. So rewrite it. So the square root of 225, I'm going to now use this, which is the square root sign. the square root button rather. That's the square root sign and the square root button on this Desmos calculator. Hey, look, make sure that you go to Desmos Scientific. Go to this one. It gives you the best example of what we need. Desmos.com/scientific. Bueno? All right, good. Okay, so we're working. All right, so we're going to type in by using this button, square root, and then we're simply going to type in 225. All right, and it's 15. The answer is 15. So once again, I told you I always want you to write. So the answer is 15. And you're going to find the answer right here. And I always use money green. I personally like money green for the answers. All right, the answer is money green. So the number is 15. The answer is 15, okay? So now that we have the answer, we can go back to the paperwork and we can just put in the answer. What is the answer? It's right here that you wrote on the side. It's 15. All right, good. All right, so now we need to do now notice this is the cube root of negative, what's that number? Yeah, it's the cube root of negative 274,625. So as I said before, I always want you to write your problems, all right? So we're going to rewrite it. So we're going to do the cube root of negative 274,625. All right, now somebody saying, Mr. Varner, you're doing too much. You can just plug it in. Trust me. When you do too much, you learn very well. When you do a lot, you learn a lot. So the more you do, the better you're going to learn. So I want you to do a lot, okay? All right, so this is what I want you to see now. This button here allows you to do the cube root. You see, that's a cube root. So this button allows you to do the cube root. So what we're going to do is click this button. And now we're going to put in the index. We're going to put in the index. So the index goes right here. So what is our index? Our index is the 3. All right. So since that's our index, we're going to type in the index. Oops, it's in the wrong space. So I'm going to backspace and I'm going to hit the button and I'm going to click here and I can put in the indexed. Now I want to put in the number under the radical sign. So what's the radical sign? The radical sign is this. That's the radical sign. Remember, this is the index. All right. Your index can be a lot of different numbers. Your index could easily be 7. You can have an index of 7. We don't have a name for an index of 7. We do have a name for an index of 3, and that's called cube root. You can actually have an index of 2. You can have an index of 2, and we call that square root. And the great thing about the index of 2 is if it's an index of 2, we don't even show it. We don't even show it. It's simply, the radical just looks like that. So we put in the index. And so we're going to put in the number now, right? And that's negative 274,625. And our answer right there in that money green, in that beautiful money green, there it is. There it is, negative 65. So now we can go back to our assignment and we can put in here negative 65. And we have the answer, right? We have the answer. Okay. All right. So let's move on. Anticipatory set. Now look, if I just went over something and it didn't make sense, play that part of the video again. Just rewind my portion of the video. Play it again, okay? Just play it again. Okay, what are inverse operations? Inverse operations are the opposite, okay? So let's go with our inverse operations. Let me give you an example. The inverse of multiplication is division. Now, as I said earlier, since we're in high school, we don't use the X anymore for multiplication. We just use a dot. Okay? Good, 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 good. Now, what's the inverse of addition? If I add something to it, I can also take away. All right? So, the inverse of multiplication is division. The inverse of division is multiplication. Inverse of plus is minus. Inverse of minus is plus. So let's answer these questions. What are inverse operations? All right. Uh, Inverse operations. Doing the opposite math. And let me stretch this out. Doing the opposite math to undo an operation. Ooh. Okay. All right. So doing the opposite math to undo an operation. All right. The inverse operation to addition. The opposite of addition is, yep, you just type it right on in there. Okay, good stuff. Subtraction. The inverse operation of subtraction is, that's simple, right? What's the opposite of this? It's this. Good, good. All right, so addition, right. The inverse operation to multiplication. La operación inversa a la multiplicación es, I probably said that horribly. Division. Okay, so the opposite, lo opuesta de multiplicación es división. La opuesta de suma es la resta. La opuesta de la resta es la suma. All right, so the opposite of multiplication is division. The opposite of addition is subtraction. My Spanish is horrible, so I'll probably mess that up horribly. I'll probably mess it up horribly, but it's okay. Okay. Let us move on. Okay, so now we're going to use the opposite to answer these problems. We're going to use inverse operations to solve one-step equations, okay? Inverse operations to solve one-step equations. So this is what I want you to do. And let's make that blue. Let's make it blue. Let's say that the equal sign has a river under it. Nice little river. That's a wavy. That's a wavy. I'll do that here too. That's a wavy. That's a wavy. Okay, so we're going to solve these problems. X plus 2 equals 10. Well, we just said that we want to do the inverse. We're trying to figure out what X is. What is X? What value, what number is X? To do that, we have to get rid of everything on this side except for the X. Get rid of everything on this side except for the X. So what we want to do is we want to look here and we see, hey, that's a positive 2. What is the opposite of positive 2? The opposite of positive 2 would be subtracting 2. The opposite of a plus 2 is a minus 2. So get this, this is kind of interesting, but it's crazy. It's crazy. A negative and a subtraction sign are the same sign because it's really the same thing. It's really the same thing. Okay. Okay, let us move on. So we're going to subtract 2 on this side of the river, and we're going to subtract 2 on this side of the river. Okay, so if you have $2 and you lose $2, now you have 0, right? So now you have x plus 0. But here's the good thing. If it's 0, we don't even have to write it. So we can just have x, okay? And on this side, 10 minus 2 is 8. And once again, the river is the equal sign. So the answer, x is 8. See how we did that? We started here. We did the opposite, lo opuesta of positive 2, which is negative 2. Negative 2 on both sides. 10 minus 2 is 8. 2 minus 2 is 0. 0. All right. 10 menos que 2 igual 8. Positivo 2 menos que negativo 2 es 0. X igual 8. So x equals 8. That's how we solve that one. Let's go to number 2. All right, so it's the same thing. We're solving for x. We're solving for x. We're going to undo addition. How do you undo addition? With subtraction. On both sides, the same thing on both sides of the river, right? Both sides of the river. So positive 5 minus 5 gives you 0, right? So now we have x plus 0. But hey, we don't need to have the 0. We can just get rid of it. Yep, we can just get rid of it. And negative 10 minus negative 5 is negative 15. Now, think of it this way. If you owed somebody $10 and now you owe them an additional $5, you owe them $15. So you owe them $10 at first, you mess around and mess up, and now you owe them an additional $5. Now you owe $15. So x equals negative 15. And let's just show it in the calculator, okay? Show it in the calculator. We'll clear. Negative 10 minus 5. Our answer is right here. Negative 15. That's how we know it's right. So negative 15, okay? Okay, good, good. Well, let's get rid of all of this and let's work on number 3 because we've done the undo addition part. Now we're going to undo multiplication and subtraction. We'll start with undoing subtraction. What's the opposite of negative 3? What's the opposite of negative 3? It's positive 3. You know, it's a negative 3, so the opposite is positive 3 on both sides of the river. So add 3 on both sides. So negative 3 and positive 3. If you owed somebody $3 and you paid them $3, now you owe them $0. And once again, if it's a 0, we don't need to write it. Okay? At this point. All right. So x equals igual 10 plus 3. I made a mistake. I said 13. Okay. Plus 3. Okay, so 10 plus 3 is 13. So x igual 13. X equals 13. All right. All we did was undo the subtraction. That's all we did was undo the subtraction. Let's do it with this one. I'm going to go through it very quickly. All right. Go through it very quickly. First of all, remember we have the river here. Okay. So the opposite of negative is plus. So we're going to add 5 on both sides of the river. Okay. -5 and 5, they just really can't cancel out. It's really 0, right? So now we have x equals, and -10 plus 5. If you owe somebody $10 and you pay them 5, how much do you still owe them? You still owe them $5. So -10 plus 5 equals -5. Negative meaning you still owe them $5. Hey, let's be sure. Let's be sure. We'll go to our handy dandy calculator. So -10 plus 5, answer is -5. Okay, and keep in mind, the opposite of addition is subtraction. The opposite of multiplication is division. And now, this time we're going to undo multiplication. We're going to undo multiplication, right? So it's about the same. Actually, it is. It's the same thing. Let's go ahead and put our rivers here. Okay. All right. 2x. 2x is really 2 times x. 2x is really 2 times x. Another way of writing 2 times x would be 2x. So the multiplication is right here. It's the 2 times x. So the opposite of multiplication is division. All right. So what we're going to do here is we're going to divide 2x by 2. And we're going to divide 10 by 2. Now, 2 divided by 2 is 1x. And similar to our 0, if it's just a 1, we don't need the 1. So we can just have the x. And 10 divided by 2 is 5. Now, if you know your multiplication tables, that makes sense to you. But if you don't, let's just check it. 10 divided by 2. You see 10 fraction 2, or 1/2 of 10 is 5. Perfecto. Okay, so x equals 5, and that's our answer. Okay. And number 6. Number 6. -2x equals 10. -2x igual 10. So negativo 2x es negativo 2 por de x. In other words, it's -2 times x. There's really a parentheses there. It's really -2 times x. So how are we going to, what's the opposite of division? Multiplication. All right, so we have multiplication, the opposite is division. So we're going to do -2x divided by -2. And then we have 10 divided by -2. So -2 goes into -2 one time. So it's 1x. And as we've said before, you don't need to write the 1. So now we have 10 divided by -2. And the answer is going to be -5. Let me show you. Let me show you where to go. All right, so let's do this. 10 divided by -2, -5. Okay, so we've answered those questions. Good. All right. Here's the assignment. All right, so this says evaluate. This is super duper easy. That's negative. I told you always to rewrite it. So that'll be The index is 3. The radical sign is there. And the number is 729. Okay. So we'll go to decimals and we're going to type in this symbol, put in the index, put in the number under the radical sign, 729, and we have our number. You see how we did that? You see how we did that? Okay. We'll do the same thing with 961. I've told you that you should always rewrite things because it helps you to lock it into your brain. So it's going to be the square root of 961. Okay. So now we're going to do this. 961. Answer is 31. Okay. Answer is 31. So now we have the answer for that. And you notice I'm not writing down the answers for you right now. Nope. That's on you. You have to do what you need to do. Write the algebraic expression, the sum. So whenever you see the word sum, that means plus. And notice, in English, it's sum. In Spanish, la suma. In English, there's sum. In Espanol, la suma. Actually, sum is a Latin word. So you're going to see sum, S-U-M, in Spanish, Portuguese. What's another Latin language? Spanish, Portuguese, French. Yeah. So you notice there's a it's just related. It's just related, right? The sum and la suma. It's related. Okay. The sum, in other words, plus of a number and 8. So the sum, so it's going to be x plus 8, is no more than. So we know that it's going to be a inequality. And the inequalities, remember the inequalities are not equal. Another inequality is less than, another one is greater than, or it might be less than or equal to, or greater than or equal to. Good. So when we say inequality, these are the inequalities. This is the inequality family. Hey, we're the inequalities. Okay, those are inequalities. Okay. So is no more than means it can't go higher than. So that's going to be is no more than is going to be less than or equal to. All right. That's going to be less than or equal to. And you can do the same thing. So what's the inverse operator? You can do the same thing with 3 and 4. Let's go to number 5, right? Let's go to number 5. What's the opposite inverse operation for multiplication? All right, good. You know what the inverse is because we talked about this. All right, so here's plus, the inverse is minus. Here's multiplication, the inverse is division. So you know what the inverse operation for multiplication is. It's up there. The inverse operation for subtraction is blah. Okay, good. Hopefully you figured that out because I'm not helping you out all the way now. I'm just kind of guiding you. All right, and we know how to do these. We know how to do these, right? We know how to do these. We know how to do these. Okay, I'll do one left. I'll do one more for you, okay? And I'm not going to even describe what I'm doing. I'm just going to do it. Okay, that's enough. Well, yeah, that's enough. All right, so you can take it from there. I'm sure you can take it from there. Do well. And if you have any problems, watch this video again. Just watch the video one more time, okay?